Hi everybody, it's your boy Solomon Simukoko again, coming with you with another video to help the would-be filmmaker or worship music director make some videos which make sense. Today I'm going to be discussing international traveling. When you are moving from place to place, what are the things you consider as a person who's either involved in creation of worship music or filming it or production and anything? This is just a simple guide I've developed. This year I've been asked to go to different countries, and it got my mind thinking, what do I need to take in account of if I'm going to go into different countries? What should I think about? I'm not saying that I'm going to go to all the venues I'm going to go with, but it's really got my mind thinking to make sure that I create a process which I can use every time I'm going a trip, kind of like a checklist. So I'm going to go through what I do when I make these international trips and what are the considerations I need to consider. So one of the first things you need to remember when you consider, I've got my notes on my phone here, is luggage. You need to ask yourself, what do I pack? So the key thing which determines what you need to pack is where are you going? Are you going on an internal trip? What car are you using? How are you going to get there? If you're taking a flight, what's the luggage allocation to that flight? You know, or even if before you book a flight, make sure that you book with an airline which gives you as much luggage as you want. Some airlines will only give you 2 pieces of luggage, your hand luggage and 1 bag. Some will give you 3 pieces of luggage. So ask yourself, some may give you 3 pieces of luggage, however, adding additional bags may cost more. So think about all these things before you even book your ticket. Secondly, look at the things you need to for your trip. Only pack the necessary clothes. You know, I'm not talking about the toothpaste and things like that. Of course, toothpaste and things like that shouldn't go in your hand luggage. Make sure it goes into your into the whole of the plane. However, what I'm talking about is make sure that you're not packing a lot of clothes. Know the weather of where you're going and pack relevant clothes. Make sure that if you're into filming, that you have packed the attire you need for filming, which is normally dark clothes if you're going to be filming so you don't appear in the film. If you're in front of the camera, make sure that you've got the attire you're going to wear. Know the weather where you're going. I'll talk a little bit about weather maybe, but we'll come back to that. So secondly, protect your stuff. Remember, I normally, when I travel to different places, I would put the most precious stuff in my hand luggage because I know that I want my important stuff on me all the time. You know, so I don't know where it's going to be if it's passing in the hall, and it's quite some of the equipment I pass with is quite expensive. Another thing you could do is bubble wrap it. I mean, at the airports nowadays, you can go and plastic wrap the whole thing to make sure that only somebody who will cut the plastic off and tamper with the thing will, I mean, if somebody works for the airport and tampers with it, it'll be easily known because they would have tampered with the plastic. So think about things like that. So think of how you're going to put your fragile things. If you're traveling with cameras, microphones, or things which are very fragile, make sure you mark them as fragile. Make sure you know that they are fragile. Make sure that the stuff which doesn't need to go into an X-ray machine doesn't go into an X-ray machine. Also, another thing I want to say a little bit on luggage is this. If you're going to go to an airport like Heathrow and with a lot of cameras, and you're in your hand luggage, they are going to make sure you take out every single camera you have, and they're going to scan it because that's what they do. It's an electronic device. There are just too many. So make sure you give yourself enough time to go through customs. Another thing you can think about is put all your equipment into flight cases which are lockable. You understand? So that they are safe and you know that everything is going to happen. Also, ask yourself, what is the essential equipment you need to take with you? Only take stuff which you really need, because you don't want to overtake stuff you don't need and end up in a situation. I mean, some stuff is good for sure, but really think less is more in this situation. You don't want to take all your equipment and lose all of it out there. I normally have a particular camera I go with, a particular phone I go with, because in certain countries it's very dangerous to go to. A particular phone I go with, so it's always protected. All right. let's talk about another thing. It's jet lag and time zones. If you're going to, remember, if you're going to go if you're going to cross the equator, remember that you are not going to lose a lot of time. However, if you're going to go along the equator, you're going to suffer majorly a thing called jet lag. When I do trips like to South Africa or different places from Europe into Africa, I normally, like if I'm in Ethiopia or South Africa or Zambia or Zimbabwe, all the places I've been to, I know that I've not lost a lot of time. However, traveling to places like the US, Canada, Australia, you need to account for the fact that when you arrive there, you'll be in a different time zone. And being in a different time zone, you need to make sure that you've given yourself enough time to rest before you do your shoot, because you don't want to be overly tired when you're doing this shoot or this performance, depending on who you are. Remember, worship leaders, pray up, pray up, pray up. Make sure that you're doing things from the heart of God. All right, let's look at one other thing. It's connections, connections, connections. If you're traveling by flight, ask yourself, where am I connecting? How long am I going to be there? I remember being stuck a few years ago in Ethiopia for I think it was over 2 days in the airport because of the way I booked my flights. And Ethiopia, you know, I love Ethiopia, but at the time, they didn't have the best of airports, and staying there for that long was a problem. So let's make sure that if we're doing connections, we try to reduce the amount of time we connect. We know where we are connecting to. We are also, if we're going to have a long layover, we actually have the necessary visas to enter the country we need to go into. So also, if you're going to do short haul flights, remember that you might only be carrying one bag. And if you're going to be carrying your tripod and your camera, which I have done, you know, on a short haul flight, and I really struggled, make sure that get the bag which has got wheels which you can pull and put everything safe. Think these things through before you do it. Don't just pack anyhow. Think these things through. So remember that wherever you may be, whether you're traveling by road or you're traveling by car, there may be delays to your trip, you know, or maybe delays to your flight. So always make sure that you have a phone, you know where the Wi-Fi is, or you have a way of communicating the people picking you up from the airport or showing you where it is, because delays will happen. So account for them. Another thing you need to remember are visas. If there are things you need to remember, like the US, depending on whether you need a visa or an electronic system, travel authorization, that's a hard word. Let's just call it an ETA, people. To go to the US, make sure that you have the necessary documentation. Secondly, make sure that you find out, depending on which country you're going to, what they need to know about going to film in that country. You may not be allowed to film anyhow. So just make sure that you know all these type of things. Secondly, it's where are you filming? In different regions, it's different. I mean, are you in an NTSC region? Are you in a POW region? Or I can't ever pronounce this word correctly, you know, the one, the SETCAM, CCAM, the one they use in the French region. Figure all these things out. Your frame rate also depends on which country and what you're filming. So, and if you're working with different teams, sometimes I go into different countries and I work with different teams. Make sure that all of you are aware of what your final output is going to be shot on what particular section. One other thing I want to also point out while I'm still on that is plugs. Each country has got its own plugs. So what I normally do sometimes is, if I know I've got a lot of equipment, things I need to charge, and they're all UK based, what I do is I take the extension, and when I arrive in the country, I just buy a new head and take out the head from my extension and put it in, so that I can have my chargers and everything all on the UK system and just the head be different. Or while I'm in the airport, I just buy the head, which takes from UK to US, UK to South Africa, so that I have that all ready. All right. Last but not least is weather. Depending on where you're going. Earlier this year, I was supposed to go to Canada. The trip never happened. Nevertheless, I realized that even though it was cold in the UK, we were like about -1, they were at -40. So make sure that you know the places you're going to and you've taken warm enough clothes or less enough clothes, depending on where you're going. So thank you for watching this. I'm going to put out another video next week. Look out for it. Remain blessed.